let's get rolling. We have a big UFC card this weekend. First off, I've been so caught up with college basketball. Thank you so much for joining us, Animarak. Can you tell us just a little bit about the event first before we break out the matchups?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me as always, Jimmy. Super excited. We're going to London for this UFC event, and it's pretty great because Darren Till is kind of the biggest hype train that London has to offer, and the UFC is really giving him an opportunity to get back on track for this fight. There's some fights on here that could easily be on a pay-per-view card, so we're getting a free fight night with some really top-level talent. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
It is going to be a fun one to watch, and your streak is intact, right? You have hit 8-0 in events. Is that right? 8-0 in events in 2019?
So my LoBag streak is intact. You guys didn't have me on the show last week, and I got murdered. I went 1-7.
Wow. Okay, maybe we are.
It was a bad night.
Well, you know what? They happen. They happen. And if you weren't on the show, that means all these guys weren't tailing you as much as normal. So let's get back to your winning ways, man. Kylie Reynolds says, Clint, bounce back card. There's some interesting spots here, man. First off, well, I know that you got a parlay that you really like that involves Till. What is the first matchup that you want to break down?
So if we want to just start at like the bottom of the card and work our way up to that parlay so we can close it out, I think that's a better idea. I like an underdog lower on the card, Ian the Hurricane Heinz. He's plus 125, plus 130 about there right now. And he's just a big physical brawler kind of fighter. He's got a great wrestling skill set, and he's just jacked. His opponent is moving up a weight class to come face him, so I think he's going to have the size and strength advantage. And all he does is really control his opponent's bodies and then maul them over the course of several rounds. So I'm going to take him as my first underdog for the night at plus 125, plus 130. I think he just roughs his opponent up for 3 straight rounds.
I like the sounds of it. Always like those plus dogs, and you seem to be able to find them easily. So we got the Hurricane at plus 125 right now. What else are you looking at?
Well, I also like Mark Diakiese. He's a plus 170, plus 160 underdog right about now. And he has been on a bad run in the UFC right now. He's actually 0-3 in his last 3 fights. Prior to that, though, he was 12-0 undefeated, and the last 3 guys that he's lost to have been really top-tier level talent. They're guys that everyone's talking about being on the short list for like the next title shot, young up-and-comers, guys we're looking for to really make some waves. So there's really no shame in him losing to them, and it's a bit of bad luck that he had to face these 3 really top-tier up-and-comers back to back to back. I think this is a good bounce back spot for him, and we're getting value on the line with him because everyone is thinking that he is worse than he really is because he's on an 0-3 skid.
Yeah, you can always take advantage. We do that here. One thing that we do, and you've been a part of it too, is we like when we see a team on a 6-0 or 5-0 winning streak, and we know that they're ripe for a loss, you're getting extra value fading it. And same thing goes when the team's on a losing streak about to break out of it. That makes a ton of sense, my man Clint. Makes a ton of sense. And Animarak, what else are you looking at on this card?
So I've got a couple of short favorites that I like. Jack Marshman is about minus 155. Henrique Silva is minus 145, and Leon Edwards is minus 125. I'm going to roll with all 3 of those favorites in this case. All 3 of them were larger favorites when the lines opened, and most of the money has come in on their opponents because of the juicy underdog lines. These fights are close, and I think we're getting value on the line because they're all rightful favorites, and we're actually benefiting from the fact that everyone's betting the underdogs in those cases. Now, 1 or 2 of those might not work out for us because I am fading the public in these cases, but I really think all 3 of them stand to win here. Silva, he's undefeated. He's got 1 loss on his record, but it was a disqualification, so it really shouldn't even count. Marshman is facing a guy who's only got knockout power. That's his one and only out in the fight, is landing a big shot. He's not UFC caliber. He's not UFC quality. So if Marshman can just avoid getting clipped 1 time, he wins that fight. And then Edwards is probably the most dangerous one. He's fighting Gunnar Nelson, who's a real well-known and dangerous fighter. He's a ground specialist, and if this fight hits the ground, he could be in trouble. But on the flip side of that, if he can keep the fight standing, he controls the pace of fights really, really well. And I think he's got the takedown defense to keep it standing, and he's going to have a huge advantage on the feet. So those are the 3 short favorites I'm going to roll with, and then I've got my parlay for you.
I like that. I like that. So you got the Hurricane as a dog. You have some nice favorites here, especially Marshman and Edwards. I like both of those looks here. Ricardo Gutierrez liking Gunnar Nelson in that spot. But I see what you're on, and I'm very excited to hear your parlay. They've been cashing on this show. What is your parlay on this spot?
So my favorite thing to do with MMA parlays is to take mid to large favorites that are basically guys that are getting gimme fights from the UFC and parlay them together for a nice price. Because I don't want to lay minus 250, minus 300 when you're talking about two guys in a cage and just one tiny mistake could be the difference between victory and defeat. However, these big favorites usually do come through because they're favorites for a reason. So we've got Dominic the Dominator Reyes, who's an undefeated light heavyweight that's just absolutely crushing the 205-pound scene in the UFC's light heavyweight division. He's getting a fight against Volkan Oezdemir, and Volkan's a dangerous fighter, but again, it's only his knockout power that Dom really has to be concerned with. Dom's got better footwork, he's the younger fighter, he's got the height and reach advantage. I think Dom busts him up over the course of maybe 1 or 2 rounds and then puts him down in mid to late round 2. So I see Dominic Reyes finishing that fight. I think both of these fighters that I'm going to give you an option on here, you could take a prop on inside the distance. 5 Dimes doesn't have anything up at this point for props, so we're just going to parlay Dominic with Darren Till in the main event. Till is fighting Jorge Masvidal, and I can't stress this is kind of dangerous because there is line value with Jorge Masvidal. Darren Till is a hype train. He is the favorite. He's the bigger of the 2 fighters, but the line is too wide, which is why I'm parlaying him in this case. There's value on his opponent, but I think Till wins. We're also in London. So if this fight goes to the decision, goes to the judges' scorecards, he's going to have a huge advantage as far as the crowd goes, the hometown edge. That's a real thing in MMA. When somebody swings and connects and the entire crowd goes nuts for it, that matters to the judges. They're sitting there cage side. They hear that when that happens. And then when the other guy clips him and it's dead silence, they're not going to score that as well. So if this goes to the scorecards, Till wins. Till's the bigger fighter. If he clips Masvidal, he can hurt anybody in that division. He can put him down and get the knockout. Masvidal fights close with his opponents pretty much every time. I just see Till winning. So we're going to parlay those 2 big favorites, Reyes and Till, for about a minus 108, minus 110.
I love that parlay. That makes a ton of sense. Reyes, Till, parlay minus 108. You have the Hurricane as your dog on the card at plus 125. Marshman minus 155. Edwards minus 125. And I'm missing one more, right? You have one more guy. I just have Marshman, Edwards, and the Hurricane. Who else do you have?
Pardon me. I threw 2 more in there. We've got Diakaze as a dog at plus 160, plus 170. And then we've got Silva at minus 145, who's another small favorite.
Oh, that is beautiful, beautiful. Great work on this card. I know you will get back to your winning ways because you're here on Low Shack in the Bag. So I know that you're going to get back to your winning ways immediately. My guy, we're so thankful to have you on this show breaking down these UFC cards. And you're getting a lot of love here, too. Kylie Reynolds says Till Wood, Reyes parlay will cash. He thinks Reyes all day long. I get that. Kareem Anthony says no low-hanging fruit, no birthday pick. Sorry. Obviously, those were things that Pete made very special, and so I apologize. With all my heart. There's nothing else I can say about that. But a lot of backing of your plays, and when Kylie Reynolds is with you, you guys hit an alarmingly high rate. And Kyle Reynolds says Till moneyline play of the year. What is the juice on Till by himself here on a single bet?
He's about minus 260, minus 265. So it's a decent amount of juice to play. But his opponent, Jorge Masvidal, only has 1 KO, TKO loss on his record. And it was actually when he was on the regional scene and a very young fighter. It was a very early stoppage. He really didn't get KO'd. He's never actually been put down in a fight. Darren Till has the power to do so, but I wouldn't suggest taking Till inside the distance just because Jorge is so durable.
Oh, that's great stuff. Golden Nug says, love the breakdown and parlay. Nice job. And Kylie Wood says, no wood, Clint. And Robbie Tagaloa says, Animarak, thanks, buddy. And Chad Ocha says, Animarak, are you posting your parlay on Twitter? Where can we find you on Twitter? And I know you have a hot podcast that's popping off these days. What is your podcast? Where can we find you on Twitter? And what else are you up to this week?
So I'm Maximus in 3D on Twitter. That's my handle. You're going to get all my weird stuff I'm into on there. If you want just my MMA breakdown, sports betting, MMA related news and things like that, I'm at Die Hard MMA Pod, and that's my podcast. I got the Die Hard MMA Podcast. I post it up on YouTube. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere you want to find a podcast. It's going pretty well. I'm excited about it and having a good time getting that out there. My breakdowns are a little more in depth, a little longer. I'm also trying to coach people a little bit on how I break down MMA fights and MMA handicapping so they can make some thoughts and decisions themselves rather than just tailing my plays.
Oh, that's great stuff, man. You're a huge asset to the family here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.